Hey guys, thanks for stopping by the Great Lakes Backpacker channel. My name is Brian, and what I want to do in today's video is share a quick tip with you that I came across several years ago. I always thought it was real clever, and it's actually helped me out on a couple of my backpacking trips. And it has everything to do with these things right here. Common, everyday plastic drinking straws. So while I'm getting things set up, why don't you guys take about 10 seconds, watch the intro, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. And first thing I want to do is explain what we're going to need for this little project here. So obviously you're going to need a set of scissors like this. You're going to need some toothpicks. That'll be helpful. You're going to want a set of pliers or a multi-tool with a set of pliers in it. And a lighter. And obviously you're also going to need some straws like I have here. Now you're going to notice that I've got two different diameters of straws. And I just want to point out a simple fact here for you. If the small diameter straws are the only thing that you have access to, this will still work. However, if you can get access to straws that have a larger diameter like this, it's going to make your life a lot easier. And for the demonstration purposes here, I'm not going to use a small diameter one, so I'm just going to set those aside. Now you're also going to notice that these two straws I have, one is see-through and the other one is not. The obvious benefit of a see-through straw is that once you get everything packaged up, you're going to be able to see the contents inside. If you can't find a clear straw, not a big deal. When you make one of these up, you simply take a marker and write on the outside of the straw what's on the inside. Okay, so what are we going to use the straws for? Well, basically we're going to use them to create watertight containers to store things that you might find helpful on a backpacking trip or some kind of outdoor excursion. And the possibilities are endless. As long as you can think it up and you can fit it inside of a straw like this, you can use the same method to store any of that kind of stuff. One of my favorite uses for this is for a makeshift fire starter. I often carry a small lighter like this or a flint and steel, but sometimes the flint and steel, if your tinder isn't quite dry, maybe it's a little bit damp, sometimes it's hard to get it going with that. And if you don't want to sit here with a lighter burning up all the fuel in your lighter, sometimes it's easier to just get a flame going with something else and then use that flame to start the rest of your tinder. And so this thing comes in real handy for a situation like that. So let me show you what we're going to do with that first. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to seal the end of the straw. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the pliers and we're going to crimp the straw just like this. And then we're going to take the lighter and just kind of melt the plastic on the end here. Just enough till you see it starting to melt, and then we're going to move the pliers over and then crimp this for a couple seconds until it dries. And now what you've done is you've created a watertight seal on the one end here. And if you want to test it and make sure, you can always blow in the opposite side of the straw. If you don't feel anything coming out here, you know that this is watertight and there's no leaks in it. It doesn't look like there's any problem there from what I'm looking at, so we're just going to continue on. So now that you've got that done, what you're going to do is you're going to take some cotton, and this is just stuff that came from a bottle of pills. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some of this petroleum jelly, and we're just going to smear it all over the cotton. You just kind of want to get it mixed all in here real well. Fluff it up, get the fibers all full of this petroleum jelly. And then what you're going to do is take small strands of this and you're going to want to push it inside of the straw. Okay, I got that done. So what I'm going to do here first is just take and cut off a section of straw. You can make these however big you want. I'm just going to make it about this big. There we go. Set that aside. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the straw and the toothpick. We're going to take little bits of this, try to roll it up as best you can, and then we're going to take it and just push it inside the straw with the toothpick. And you're going to shove it down there. Take another section, try to get it small enough like that to get it started, and then again you're just going to use the toothpick to shove this in, and that looks like it's enough. The cotton right now is about to this point, and you want to make sure you don't put it all the way to the end, because you're going to need room to put the pliers on here, and then you're going to need some of this plastic straw left over that you can melt. So what I'm going to do now is take the pliers, I'm going to crimp it right here, and then we're going to light it, melt the edge, and once you've got the edge melted, you're just going to take the pliers and then crimp it again. Hold it for a couple seconds just for it to cool down and seal up, and there you go. You've now got your petroleum soaked cotton inside of here, and the nice thing about this is it's now watertight. So if you're in a damp environment and you're having a hard time getting your tinder started for a fire, this is a nice option. Okay, so if you were in the field and you wanted to use this, how would you go about doing it? Well, this is something that I made up before. It's not the large one I just did, but I'm going to use the small one. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a knife and you can just cut off the end. And now what you can do is you can pull a little bit out, you can pull the whole thing out, however you want to do it, and then all you do is simply light this up, and then now you've got a flame that's going to burn for quite a while. And like I said, you can either leave it in the straw and just let it burn down through the straw, or you can pull the whole thing out, put it in a pile of tinder, and this is going to help you get your fire going. So that's how you would use something like this. And like I said, this is one of my favorite uses for these drinking straws. So let me set this aside, we'll move on to the next one. Alright, another good use for something like this is, let's say at the end of a long day you need some vitamin I, some ibuprofen. And let's say you don't want to take a whole container along with you. One of the things you could do is use one of these straws to take the pills and store them in for your trip. So once again, what we're going to do is we're going to crimp the end, we're going to melt the plastic, going to move it over, crimp it, hold it down for a couple seconds. Now we've got a sealed end. So what you could do is we'll cut off a section here like this. Set that aside, and then what you could do is you could take your pills, drop them down in here, and then no, that one's not going to fit. We'd have to make it a little bit longer, but you get the idea. So what we're going to do now is crimp the end, we're going to melt it, and you can see it shrinking up and melting there, and then we're going to take the pliers, put it on the melted end, hold it for a couple seconds. And as you can tell, you've got a nice sealed end here, and your pills are in here. Alright, how about this for another use for the straws? Let's say you have some Strike Anywhere matches. These aren't. I don't have any available, but let's say these were Strike Anywhere matches. One more way to have another source of starting a fire. So you could take a couple matches, you can take a straw with the end already done, you can drop them down in there, and then once again we're going to melt the end. Now you just want to make sure you have enough room down here so that when you put a flame on here, you're not going to heat up the match head and start a fire with your straw. These are down far enough. Hold it for a couple seconds. That should be good. And you can tell it's nice and flat. It's got the crimp marks in here. And so now you've got matches that are waterproofed in case you need to use them for starting a fire. Alright, Another option for the straws is to be able to carry some kind of antibiotic ointment, and a lot like the cotton soaked with petroleum jelly, this is another one of my favorites. I always like taking some kind of antibiotic ointment with me, because when you're out in the woods, if you get a cut or a scratch or something like that, things are dirty. You're not necessarily washing your hands every couple minutes to keep things clean. So I always like to have something like this you can put on a cut or a scratch to keep it from getting infected. So what you want to do with this is you're going to cut the end of the straw, and you're going to want to make sure you don't seal it beforehand, because you're going to want to have airflow through here so that when you squeeze the antibiotic ointment in here, it can actually flow through towards the other end. So what we're going to do, we're going to put it in here like this, and we're just going to squeeze some in here, and you can see it moving. So now we're just going to put this aside, and as you can tell, we've got some of that jelly in there, some of that ointment. And what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze the end here, get it away from the end that we squeezed it in from, get it more towards the middle, and that way we can put the pliers on it and seal it up like we did with the other ones. And then, as you can tell, once again, you got the crimp marks in there, it's sealed up. I could have put a little bit more in here, but this will work for now. Melt the plastic, move it over, and crimp it. A couple seconds is good enough. And then, as you can tell, once again, you can see the crimp marks on here. This stuff is now in here, it's sealed up, away from the elements, no moisture, dirt's going to get in here. And then if you need it, simply cut the end off. You can apply it to your cut or your scratch, put a band-aid on if you need, and there's a nice way to carry antibiotic ointment. Alright, how about something like this? Let's say you're going on a trip and you want to have some kind of spice or flavoring to take along. Anything powdered. You could have something like chili powder. You could have minced dried onion, salt, pepper, basically anything powdered or granulated that you want to use. This is an excellent way to store it. So for this purpose, I'm just going to use some of the salt, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour some into my hand. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a straw that you've already sealed the end on, and then you're just going to scoop some of that salt or whatever flavoring you want into there, and then when you've got it filled about that far, you're just going to crimp the edge and melt it. Hold it down a couple seconds, and now once again you can see that it's tight and sealed up. Okay, how about for something a little bit different here to wrap it up? What if you have some kind of liquid that you want to take with you? Maybe you want some kind of Tabasco sauce. Maybe you're going to use some kind of olive oil for some recipe that you're going to make. This is a really nice way to store this kind of stuff. I've already crimped the one end of it, and instead of putting a dropper inside the container, what I did was just put some in a small container here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a dropper, and we're just going to fill the straw. I'll set that aside, and once again we're going to crimp the end. And what you may want to do is you may want to leave a little bit of a pocket there so you don't have it crimped right down next to the oil, and crimp it shut. Hold it for a couple seconds, and then there you go. You've got a nice crimp on the end. And let's say that you need more than just this amount of liquid. You can cut these straws at whatever length you want. If you want a whole straw length, crimp it at one end, fill the whole straw up with whatever you want, and then crimp the other end. It's up to you. You can make these as long or as short as you want. So there's one final use for you. Okay, so let's say you've got something powdered or granular that you don't necessarily want to reseal the end. Maybe you do it initially, but after you've used it and you didn't use the whole all the contents, you're going to want to reuse it again at the next meal, and you don't necessarily want to crimp the end. one of the options for you is you can flatten the end out, and you could use your pliers for this. Kind of squeeze it, flatten it out a little bit, and then what you could do is fold it over on itself like this, and then simply put a crease in the middle like this. And then what you can do is take a section of straw, squeeze that together like this, and now just slide that over the end, and that stuff is not going to come out. And now if you want to reuse it for your next meal, all you have to do is take the end off, flip that up, squeeze the straw a little bit, and then you can see the contents come out. So just a final option for you, a way of using it to seal it up. Obviously this may not work very well if you've got some kind of liquid in there, but if you've got some kind of spice or something granulated or powdered, that would work. Okay, and like I said before, what you may want to do is get yourself a Sharpie marker, and especially if you don't have the straws that are see-through like this, you may want to use your marker to put down what's on the inside of the straw so that when you want to go use it, you don't have to go hunting for it. It'll help you out a lot in the long run. Alright guys, that about wraps up this video. I appreciate you stopping by and watching, and if you found this to be as helpful and informative as I did several years ago when I first learned about it, please consider giving it a thumbs up down below. And until next time, get outside and enjoy the great outdoors.